All right, the last episode ended with me on the cusp of moving to Nashville, Tennessee. It was spring of 2005, and there in the Holy Land, not the actual Holy Land, the theme park in Orlando, God convicted me. You do not need to go to Nashville. That was the voice I heard in my heart and in my head, but once I surrendered that back to him, that dream, I gave that back to God. It was like it all came back to me right away, and God just wanted to see if I was willing to give it up. So if you missed episode 2, part 1, you can go back and listen to it. So now I'm picking up right where that story left off. You would think that I just got in my car and moved right to Nashville, but no. I ended up deciding I'm going to move back to North Carolina. Well, once I did, it was June of 2005, and a good friend of mine, Brandon Matthews, he was the first guy that ever sat me down and told me, Adam, you need to go to Nashville. I think I was 18 at the time, and I couldn't believe anybody actually thought that I should go to Nashville. I certainly didn't have the talent nor the confidence. That's a fact. But 3 years later, I was ready. I'll just put it that way. I knew I wanted to go. I was ready. I'd give it to God. He confirmed it again in my life. So when he offered me the chance to go to Nashville with him and Parker, my best friend I grew up with in Carolina, if you missed the last episode, they wanted to go to Nashville to the CMA Festival. Now, this was a dream come true. 4 days of country music, staying downtown in Nashville, Tennessee. I couldn't believe it. So guess what? We took off, and we rode in Brandon's little red Honda. We got to Nashville, and we just couldn't believe it that day after day I was seeing all these songwriters and entertainers and bands and Billy Ray Cyrus and the Oak Ridge Boys. I mean, I'm seeing all these guys at Riverfront down there, right next to the Cumberland River. Well, then we'd go over to the stadium every night. And if you've never seen the CMA Fest, it's wild, man, because you got all these concerts all day, and then you go over to the big stadium, and the big names are playing there. That's where the Tennessee Titans play. At the time, it was called LP Field. Now it's Nissan Stadium. Well, the closing night belonged to Alan Jackson. They considered him, at the time, I believe, he was the biggest name. And here it was, summer 2005, and I'm sitting there way up in the nosebleeds with Parker and Brandon. And I'll have to give you a little context here. In these 4 days, I completely lost my confidence that I could move to this town in Nashville and do anything. Because you got to understand, I did not understand the party culture. I didn't drink. So I was realizing that nobody came here to watch these people sing. Everybody came here to party and have a big time. And to me, having a big, exciting time was just sitting here in a chair watching, these people sing and listening to them. But nobody else seemed to think that, and I thought, how can I connect from a stage with these audiences? I don't know how to do that. And how can I write songs that's going to relate to these people? And I just lost all confidence and thought, there's nothing in Nashville for me. And I was a bit brokenhearted. So I'm sitting there watching a huge beach ball bounce around the stadium to my point. I'm watching this beach ball bounce around, and these people are missing Alan Jackson singing all these hits. Well, they're having a good time. But to me, I'm like, what's going on here? I mean, they're not even paying attention. What did they buy tickets for? To hit a bouncy ball across the stadium? So I can't relate with that. But I'm focusing on Alan and the band. Alan, like I know him. I don't know him. I've never met him. Well, I did shake his hand once. But anyway, I'm focusing on Alan Jackson and the band. I'll have to tell y'all sometime. I'll end this story with Alan Jackson buying me coffee, because that did happen. But that would happen much later. So let's go back to summer of '05. I'm in the top of that stadium, and all of a sudden, a real soft, gentle guitar starts playing, and Alan says he's going to sing a new song, and it's called What I Do. And up there in the nosebleeds, I can hear every word as he says, I've been a waiter, a roofer, and a clerk, and I've shoveled manure until my pride hurt. When you're starting out, it's all part of the work to do what I do. He says, I've played for empty tables and chairs, crowds who don't listen, and drunks who don't care. Actually, I got that backwards. It's drunks who don't listen and crowds who don't care. He says, I've been told countless times, boy, you ain't going nowhere to do what I do. It's emotional for me to repeat this because I started getting big old tears in my eyes when I listened to him sing these lines. And he said, now here I stand with this 6-string guitar, being what I've always been in my heart, just for the chance to play you my songs, and the thrill that I feel when you're singing along makes it worth everything I've been through to do what I do. Whew. I'm telling y'all, I can go right back to that moment because that was a life changer. It jolted me back, and I knew I could relate with that. I knew that it was worth it to go through whatever I would have to go through to figure out what the future looks like. I don't fit in. I don't understand these crowds, but whatever that man is doing, that's what I do. And to have that moment in that stadium, I remember walking out of there and just looking at Brandon and Parker, and I had big tears running down my cheeks. And they're like, what's wrong with you? And I said, guys, that song I have to move here. I keep putting it off. I have to move here. And they encouraged me. They said, we've been trying to tell you. But you see, I didn't have any money. I lived in Florida and I didn't save a dime. I don't know what I did with it. So here I was in Nashville. We're about to go back to North Carolina. And I've got nowhere to live. I've got no job. So what I did was I went back and I moved in with my mom and my stepdad and decided I'm going to work for a month or two. I'm going to save every penny and I'm going to go there and find me a place to live in Nashville. I don't know anybody there, but I'll figure it out. So I got a job with my cousin, and he was so good to me. He gave me a job. I didn't know how to do anything. And he started sending me climbing under houses, running wire for him. He installed security systems in homes and cameras in gas stations. As a matter of fact, one of them gas stations was a guy named Ahmed working there. And Ahmed got so mad at one of his employees when we were sitting there installing cameras. I had my head in the ceiling tiles, and I heard Ahmed said, "This is bullshit. I cannot believe this." He started going off on the guy, and I about fell out of the ceiling. I was laughing so hard. And he just said, "This is bullshit. Buck you, get off the..." It just lost his mind. This might get me canceled right here, but I'm just telling y'all what happened. But me and Scott thought that was so funny. He was my cousin. And I ended up writing a song about that. So if y'all ever hear that come out, just know it came from that gas station. It's a true story. But I had so much fun working for him, and I was making some money, and I just kept dragging it on month after month. And here I was still not moving to Nashville. I was just perpetually on the cusp, not actually doing it. I had no nerve. I was scared. I was a wuss. I was living in fear with a big dream in my heart. Well, Parker came back from college. He was in Lynchburg University, and now it's the end of the year. And he's like, "Man, for 6 months you've been talking about going. What are you doing?" He said, "You need to get out of here." He said, "You're going to stay here, and you're going to regret it." Well, right before he had gone to school, they invited me to Missouri. I was going to say Michigan. It was Missouri. Parker and his family invited me to see his grandparents in Missouri. So here we go. We drive through Nashville on our way from North Carolina to Missouri, and we were just in Nashville a month earlier or 2 months earlier at the CMA Fest. I still hadn't moved there, and this topic comes up. Why have you not moved to Nashville, Adam? What are you doing? Why are you wasting your time? And I'm like, I'm trying to save my money, blah, blah. I'm giving the same old long story. And Parker's mother, Miss Cheryl, says, I've got a phone number for you. She said, call these two people and talk to them, and they might be able to help you figure it out once you get to Nashville. They live here. She said, these are dear friends of ours from years back, from the 80s. I took that phone number and put it in my pocket. And all them months later, it's Christmas time. Parker's visiting, and he's telling me, you still hadn't called him. You still haven't gone. What are you doing? Well, I finally called him. And they were very nice, and they said, listen, we live in Hendersonville. And they said, if you ever come here, just call us, and we'll show you a good church. And they started sending me in the mail bulletins from their church, Long Hollow Baptist in Hendersonville. And they started sending me Apartment Finder magazines. And so I started getting this stuff in the mail. And it was like God was just opening my heart more and more, like, get your butt in Nashville. And then I got sicker than a dog, and I couldn't go to work for like a week. I had a stomach flu. And as I'm finally getting better, I called my cousin. This was late January 2006. I said, hey, man, I'm better now. I can come back to work. He said, nope. He said, you need to make up your mind, Adam. He said, if you're going to keep working for me, you need to live here. And he said, if you're going to move to Nashville, you need to go on and go. And I was like, what? Are you serious? He said, yep. So guess what I did? I got in the car and started driving to Nashville. And I called that number. And those people said, our home will be available for you to come visit us and eat supper with us Friday. Well, it was Wednesday when they told me that. And I was like, well, I guess I'll still be there Friday. So I went to a hotel, crappy old hotel, and I decided I'm going to go get me a job tomorrow. So I went all over town that Thursday, and I filled out applications. I went to the Ryman. I remember I was talking to them about becoming a security guard, and they wanted me to work all the events and be there at night. And I was like, shoot, that's when I want to be playing gigs. So I didn't take that job. And then I ended up at Bass Pro, and I lined me up a job. And then I didn't have anywhere to live, but I was going to all these apartments in crappy parts of town. They all wanted $1,500 and $2,000 leases, money down and stuff. And I was like, what? I didn't know nothing about that. I was like, money down. And just nothing was really working out there. But I had a job, and they said, you can start in 2 weeks working for Tracker Boats. Well, then I went and had a meal with Larry and Patty at their house. They had invited me over. So I go in there, and they go, so how do you know our friends? And I told them about that, and we got to talking, and the time just went by, and they said, you're not going back to that hotel. They said, you stay here tonight. I said, what? They said, yeah. They said, in the morning, we're going to take and show you an apartment, and maybe it's for rent. And that next morning, I'll never forget. As a matter of fact, if you go backwards one day, before I even met Larry and Patty, I went and found Long Hollow Baptist Church because I wanted to go there. And it was that Wednesday night I got into Nashville. So the first thing I did when I got to Nashville, instead of getting a job, I went straight to the church that I wanted to go to. And I found it. And I'll never forget, I walked in that church, and there was activities going on. It was like youth activities. And I went up to the first adult I could find. And I said, hey, do you know Larry and Patty? And there's just hundreds and hundreds of people there. And this guy says, well, that's my mom and dad. And I said, are you serious? And so I told him who it was. I don't know if he even knew who I was, but I just left. And I was like, Lord, you just brought me here and just made me talk to this guy. That's their mom. That's their son. And come to find out, he was like he was like the youth pastor there. So I got in the car and I said, I'm going to go drive down this road. I drove down Long Hollow Pike towards I-65. And if you know this area, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, I'm sorry. But I was out in the country, and I had been thinking about getting one of these crappy apartments in town somewhere, one of these dumpy parts of town. But I'm driving down this road, and it's beautiful. And I just said, Lord, if there's any way I could live out here somewhere and you could make it possible, that would be incredible. I prayed that prayer as I was in the curvy road section in the woods of this particular road, Long Hollow Pike. I went back to the hotel at night, and here I was a few days later at Larry and Patty's, and they say, we're going to take you in the morning and show you an apartment that's for rent. I said, okay. So the next morning I got up, and me and Larry hopped in the truck and went on down the road, and he turned left on Long Hollow and kept going right to that spot where I prayed and turned right into the driveway that I was praying when I drove past the other night. And I'm like, this can't be. And we go down this long driveway to a farmhouse way back in the holler and get out. And he says, hey, Alice, to this beautiful older lady, very kind, nice, sweet lady. And he says, hi, Alice, I want you to meet Adam. Adam's looking for an apartment, and we're wondering if your apartment is for rent. And she said, well, yeah, it still is. And I went walking up in this apartment above a garage, and it was absolutely heaven. It was perfect. One bedroom, one bath. It was amazing. And I just couldn't believe it. And I said, well, what have I got to give you for this? She said, well, it's $450 a month. I said, well, I can't be here for another week or two because I got to finish out my job back in North Carolina, which I was committed. I believed in the 2-week notice for some reason. I kept doing that. I was like, that's what you're supposed to do. So that's what I thought. And she said, well, that'll be fine. It'll be here when you get here in 2 weeks. I said, well, what do I give you now to hold it? She said, nothing. Just a handshake. I was like, what? I shook her hand, and I couldn't believe it. So I left there, went to church at Long Hollow the next day, and it was a man named David Landreth was the pastor, an amazing preacher, an amazing band, amazing church, and I'm just on cloud 9. I'm like, I can't believe this is all happening. I've already met people that love the Lord, love me, and showing me all around this town. And I'll never forget, I watched the Super Bowl that night in Gallatin at Long Hollow's new church that they had up there. They called that a Long Hollow Gallatin campus. And for some reason, I guess they illegally played the Super Bowl up there in 2006 at this time. So I made sure I had that job at Bass Pro waiting on me. And I went back to North Carolina, tied up my loose ends. And I got in the car on February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2006. My little purple Honda Civic was loaded down. The same car that I drove to Florida in is now the car that I'm moving to Nashville in. And I started that drive, and I felt so much at peace and so much excitement. And I got to my apartment at 2 a.m. For some reason, I left late in the day. And I walked in, and there was a big sign up that said, welcome to Nashville, Adam. We're so proud of you. And the refrigerator was full of all my favorite stuff. It turns out that Larry and Patty, they're in Hendersonville, the people whose phone number I had been handed 6 months earlier, they picked up on all the things that I liked. They asked me all the right questions, I guess, and I just blabbed and blabbed. and they learned all about me, and they made that apartment just like home for me, and had my favorite snacks and drinks and everything in there. And to this day, I can't believe these people were this kind to me. And when I went and gave Alice $450, the landlord, she said, I tell you what, she said, it's the middle of the month. Hold on to that money. Get yourself situated. And when you pay me that, you're paying for March. And I said, you mean you're going to let me live here for free for 2 weeks? And she said, that's what I want to do, honey. And there you have it. God took me to Nashville, opened every door, and there I was. I got up the next morning and went to my orientation at Bass Pro, and I was on the cusp now of figuring out how to go play music and write songs, but that was still yet to happen. We'll talk about that in a later episode. But the funny part, the funny ending to this story is a week or two after I moved into that amazing apartment, just when I thought everything was perfect, Miss Alice came over, the landlord. She said, honey, I made a mistake and told another person, a school teacher, that she could live in there till the end of the school year, and she's moving in here in a day or two. And I need you to get all your stuff and come over here and live in the upstairs of my house, and I'll cut your rent in half. And then when she's done living there in May, you can move back. And so I had to carry all my stuff across the driveway and move into the upstairs of this lady's farmhouse. And while I lived there, I would go down in the mornings and pour me a bowl of cereal. And one time there was a goat standing there, right in the middle of the kitchen. And another time there was a chicken, and she had animals and just let them in there. And then one time I was gone looking for somewhere to play music or something. I got in late one night and I went into the bathroom, and my towel was soaking wet. And I said, what's going on here? And I looked, and my toothbrush was wet. And I started looking around. There's another bedroom there, and there was somebody in there with the light on. And the next morning, I said to Alice, I said, Miss Alice, I said, it looks like somebody used my stuff in the bathroom. She said, oh yeah, there's someone else living here now. I said, really? Well, who is it? And it was this big old homeless woman. And Alice had seen her somewhere, felt sorry for her, and took her in. And that woman went in there and used my toothbrush and my towel and everything right before I got home. And it was like, I just couldn't believe it. So, not everything is a smooth transition. Not everything. It's not all sunshine and roses out there. I'll tell you, I had to get through some kinks. I had goats in my bowl of cereal. I had homeless people living and using my towel. It was rough going there for a little bit, but I finally got my apartment back, and man, it was just awesome. So God answered my prayer, and I was on the cusp of Nashville. I finally got there, and now I was on the cusp of something else, and I had no idea what it was. But I hope this has been interesting enough for y'all. So I'm about to get in the car, which means I can't do the podcast, because once I get out of here, it's no longer on the cusp in the car. So I'm on the cusp of getting out of the car and ending this podcast right now.